Hey there, welcome to this Wiseline Academy. My name is Rodrigo Chaparro, and I'm data engineer here at Wiseline. Proudly to say that I've been a Wiseliner for more than 3 years, and I have more than 6 years of experience working as a data engineer. I have more than 4 years working with Airflow, and I'm gonna be your official chauffeur in this journey called Airflow implementation in the cloud. So bear with me and enjoy your ride. So, before all, let me talk about our agenda. We're going to be talking about Wirefly in the cloud, the difference between clouds, like the architecture, the security and access, and we're going to be comparing to our providers. Going to be Amazon Web Services against Google Cloud. I'm going to talk about the difference between the environment, the DAG deployment, the dependencies, and plugins, also known as requirement TXT, how to do our local development, CI/CD, and of course our communities. And last but not least, we're gonna have our conclusions, tips, and tricks. Okay, so let's talk about why Airflow in the cloud. Well, when you have just going to hit production or you're gonna have your pipelines be ready just for work, you have to work with mainly with escalation. Maybe you need to add more resources, or even when you have already have all your workload and you have one just to slow down a little bit the process, you can go with escalation, and in the cloud it's gonna give you this little pro that is gonna be hard just to have when you have your own premise servers and even in virtualization stuff. So that's one of the main reasons. Also, it's like the management. It's in the cloud. It's gonna be easier and faster because it's gonna be managed by one of these service providers like Google Cloud or AWS. So you are only a few clicks away just to scale up or scale down your cluster. Also, just to if you want just to set up a new environment just for dev or for a new, I don't know, maybe a new step like production or UAT, it's easier just to some clicks and that's it. You are just good to go. And also we have like this management layer about access and security, where you have just these firewalls, virtual private clouds, and this user interface that you're gonna just be able to share between your organization, and if you already have some implementations in the cloud, it's gonna be easier to you just to handle that kind of stuff, right? So let's talk about a little bit about the architecture that Google Composer had. So you can see in here, like the Google Composer environment is working in a cluster of Kubernetes, and you can see in the left part that is green, you have like the customer project, and also in the right side in the color blue, we have like the tenant project. Let's talk a little bit about our customer project. So you can see like there are different components of our Airflow, like the schedulers. We have our queue that in this case is using Redis, and we have like the workers. We have one of the Cloud SQL proxy that is gonna just lead us to the database that we are using, and we have like the agents of the Google Composer and also the monitoring. And of course, just have our environment bucket that is the place that is going to be shared by all our workers and all our schedulers, just to have our code and share content over there. And the tenant is like a layer of security that is going to have a proxy that's going to expose our Airflow web server to the internet, and also it's going to provide our identity, our proxy that is going to give us username and password using Google account, and you can manage that in our IAM service in the Google Cloud interface. So also we have like this Airflow UI access where you're able to trigger your DAGs, manage variables, connection, other stuff that you are normally used to work in your local environment. And also for the customer project, we have like the cloud SDK of gCloud, that is this tool that you can install in the command line. And also you have like the Google Cloud user interface that you normally access by the web browser, and you are able to create environments, set it to the current active environment just to scale out, scale up, scale down, and other stuff. So this is basically like the whole interface. And one of the things that I really like about this one is that you have already a dashboard that can give you um, the how your cluster is going on, how your DAGs are behaving, and that other stuff like the timing. And so these also statistics that can give you a good view about how it's the health of your environment. And that way we have these airflow monitoring stuff. For example, all the logs that are just generated by your airflow instance are going to be stored in as the environment bucket and are going to be able to read it by airflow directly from the bucket. And you can just have some other statistics or some other services directly for there. Also, you can have snapshots because each node of this environment cluster is going to be some compute engine instances. So it's gonna give you a good health for how it's going on, right? So now let's talk about Amazon MWAA architecture. That MWAA stands for Amazon Managed Workflow for Apache Airflow. So you can see that it's separated in two different VPC, two different virtual private clouds. One is for the customer, it's like the service, and the other one is the service. So the customer is going to have our components of the Airflow environment, like the schedulers, the workers, our database, and we have in just right in between we have like the web servers that is going to be connected between our private network and the public network. So the service VPC is the one that is going to be in charge of exposing our servers to the world, in this case in the public environment. And also we have all our logs of that are going to be generated not only by the tasks or the jobs, but also by the environment, like installing requirements or starting the scheduler, workers, web servers, and other kind of stuff. It's going to be using Amazon CloudWatch. And the same here, we have also our Amazon Simple Storage service, where it's going to be leave all our code on another plugins and requirement that is also called Amazon S3. And we have our queue service that is not going to be used Redis. It's another proprietary of AWS. And of course, our AWS key management service that is going to help us just to store our keys and be able to communicate encrypted data between our workers and the schedulers and the web server. So one of the important things to mention is that in this part, there is no monitoring dashboard. There is no way to check the health of your environment, the workload, and that kind of stuff. It's not able here in AWS, but you can just use like you install some other services that are going to run in CloudWatch just to be able to do that, but you're going to have the same details that you have for the Google Cloud Composer. So there is like the third way to do it, like it's like the hard or expert mode. So it's like you just have to create new instances, EC2 instance or compute engine instance, and then just install Airflow and do all the manage by yourself. So this is like really hard. I don't not recommend this because it's gonna be also expensive, because you have just to do all the stuff between the not only instantiating the virtual machine, but also work with the configuration of the firewall, security, and that kind of stuff. But there's another way to do it. If you want just to do it, feel free just to try it. So let's talk pretty quick about the environment. So the environment for MWA, we have, it's going to be almost the same for Google Composer. So we have like different zones that are going to be like in the United States, like East, West, or also we have like in Asia or other stuff. So that depends of where you're located at. So if you're closer to some specific zone, it's going to be faster. And also the price is going to be different based on the zone that you choose. And we have like the same sizes for the environment in both environment. We have like small, medium, and large. For Amazon, we have like the capacity of one of the workers. The small is gonna be just like half CPU, virtual CPU on each of the instances. and that kind of stuff. And we have like the price here is gonna be just like the big difference, like the main difference between the environments, because for MWA you're gonna be charged an environment fee just to like they use this layer of service, and you're gonna be charged by each worker, by each scheduler, and the amount of that data that you're just storing in your meta database. So if you have like 3 workers or maybe 10 workers and 3 schedulers, you're gonna be charged by the 10 workers and the 3 schedulers the whole instance, and you can just scale up or scale down based on your necessities, and you can just automate that. And the smallest can go like around $120 monthly, like, and the biggest can go like the basics of the large can go to $600. That's again based on the zone and how you're gonna be your workload charge for the environment. For Google Composer, the size of the environment is gonna depend on how much workers um, and of how big can go, how many workers you can put, and how many schedulers can work. That depends of the size of your environment. But the price, it's gonna be built different because you're gonna be charged by the compute CPUs, compute memory, compute storage separately. So imagine that you have just a pipeline that is gonna just grab some huge file from some bucket and just gonna transform it from, I don't know, maybe JSON to CSV, and you're gonna do that on streaming, and then it's gonna just put in some other place. You're gonna just using compute memory. That is one of the cheapest thing in the Google Cloud thing. So you're not gonna use storage. You're just gonna be charged by the memory. So that's gonna be good for you because that's gonna make your environment cheaper. And then for if you're not generating too much large, the database storage is not gonna be so big, and you're gonna just also pay for the environment fee. So instead of paying for the whole instances like you're doing in AWS, you're gonna be charged by the resources that you are using. This is one of the advantages that you're using a Kubernetes cluster with separate resources of this stuff. So that's one of the pros that you can see in using Google Composer instead of MWAA, right? So let's talk about the DAG deployment. This is really straightforward. So if you want to just to deploy your DAGs to one or other environment, it's pretty easy. You only have just to upload your code to the bucket. For Amazon, it's going to be an S3 bucket. And of course, for Google Composer, it's going to be a Google Cloud Storage bucket. So you can upload it just like drag and drop from the web browser or using your command line tool. That's up to you. So it's pretty easy. You only copy your Python files to the bucket that it was created or designated for the environment. That's it. That's all that you need to know just to deploy your DAGs. You only have just to have some permissions, of course, of writing permissions of the bucket, but that's part of the security. So talking about the dependencies and plugins, there is some difference here. For example, for the AWS, there's going to be the need just to create a requirement TXT file that's going to include the library that we want to use and also the version. So this requirement TXT needs to be uploaded to the bucket of the environment, and then you have just to put it in your configuration. And also for the plugins, you have just to these plugins can be custom operators or other third-party operators that are not in the main code base of the Airflow. This is a plugin folder you have on your Airflow installation. You have just to package this folder as a zip file and then upload it to the bucket designated for your environment. And then after doing one of these changes, or maybe both, you have just to go and update your environment. This means go to the web user interface and just click edit, and then just choose the right version of the requirement txt file and the right version of the plugins zip file. So as you can imagine, this is a requirement for the bucket that you are using as your environment, that it's had enable the version, the control version for the files. So that's how things work in AWS. You can also update it by web user interface, or also you're running the command just to update using the AWS command line interface. For Google Composer, it's easier. Also, you can just run a command in your terminal that say like, "Hey, I want just to update the requirement file for this environment, you only have just to put the name of your environment and also the location and the local file in your local machine or the machine that you are running this command of the txt file is going to be updated. There is also some known errors. So when you try just to update some environment that is the same, they already have the same dependency installed that you have in your requirement file, it's going to tell you that there are some changes that need to be required to in there. So this is like working as expected. And one of the most friendly user thing is like this web user interface where you can just directly click on the add and write the name of your library and the specific version that you want, and you can just add them directly into the web browser and click on the apply button, and you're gonna be able just to install or remove dependencies based on what you choose on the web user interface. And for the plugins folder, you can you have a folder in your bucket that is really working as works in your local environment. You only upload it directly to your files without being compressed in that bucket, and it's gonna be show up like in 1 or 2 minutes, just as the DAC just fills. It's filled up in the Google Composer, so it's just a new folder in the bucket. So it's pretty easy. That's like the main difference about the dependencies and plugins about working on the clouds for these two providers. So talking about the local development, so one of the pros that I see for MWA, and I have to say I'm pretty happy with this one, is this repo in GitHub that's called MWAA local runner. So it's just a repo that you just clone to your machine, and it's a Docker Compose. Docker Compose is just like group or Docker containers that's gonna have you like the whole set of the stuff. So this is a cloud environment replication, so the same image that you are running on your local machine is going to be the same image that is going to be run on the AWS Airflow instance. So this is pretty useful just to test the requirements if you have some libraries and other stuff. So there is this warranty that if it's running on your local runner, it's going to be able to run on the cloud on MWA. So this is really good. And also, I could recommend you to use this constraint file. So if you go to the Apache Airflow repo in GitHub and look for the constraint file specific for the version that you are using, maybe 2.02 or something like that, that you're running on your cloud environment, and you will have issues with the version that you are using. So it's really amazing also for just having the same local environment between developers in a team that is not like maybe small but is not that big. It will be better just to have the same development environment on each machine. So that's a downside, like a pushback in Google Composer, because there's no like local environment. You can use like the official Airflow Docker Compose repo, but sometimes the version that you have in your Docker Compose is not going to be the same that you're going to be running Google Composer. So you're going to have some struggling about the library version because it's going to work in your local environment, but not in Google Composer. This is basically because Google just copy or fork the Airflow repo and then build their own Google Composer images, and then that's what they deploy to the Google Compose environment. So that's another downside, because maybe some patches and some fixes, some kind of stuff are just releases for Airflow, but it's no longer available in Google Composer because there's like this custom version, and also there's new releases that are gonna be just take some time just to be able just to use it in Google Composer. It took like 6 or 7 months to be able to use the Airflow 2 version in Google Composer. It was pretty hard, and there were some versions that got skipped in Google Composer due to some incompatibilities. Also, you can just run as local instance. You install it directly with some brew or pip, some pip command just to install Airflow in your local machine, and then work with that. but that's not like the um, most common stuff right now. But that's how you can do it for local development in for both cloud providers, right? So let's talk about CI/CD. So for you have plenty of integration for both, like GitHub with GitHub Actions, Bitbucket Pipeline, Jenkins, Circle CI, you name it. And also you have for MWA, you have like the AWS Code Commit with AWS Code Pipelines, or like the in Google Cloud, you have like the Cloud Build just to connect your pipelines of CI/CD. This is like the pros. You have just plenty of options in there. And but for example, for AWS, you have like the limited clean interface comments. If you are already working with Airflow and you're run unit testing and integration tests, maybe you are working with triggering DAGs, reading the status of the DAG, creating variables, and creating connection from the Airflow API. Just to tag some of your runs and that kind of stuff. Not all of those commands are ready in AWS MWA, are not that easy just to execute. And as you can see here for the updating the environment, imagine that you can have new plugins or new requirements. You have just to run this command like in your CloudFormation, your maybe bash script in Jenkins or Python, something like that. You have just to not only specify the path of your plugins file or your requirements file, but you also have to specify the version. So you have just to run some steps before like uploading the file and then just retrieving the version, the specific version, like the date, and then use that as a variable just to run the command that I'm showing you here, just to update your environment. And the environment the update takes like maybe sometimes 15 to 20 minutes, even if there's like simple change of the requirement files. That depends of on the AWS. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's faster, but it takes a good amount of time. And for Google Composer, it's pretty easy. Also, the SDK commands are pretty complete. You can just run commands directly to Airflow. You can just you name it, the name of the command that you want just to run, you can just pass it directly with this wrapper, and you can just retrieve the result for that one. Also, for the requirement update, this is like the command that I was mentioning before. You only have to run this command in the same directory that you already have your requirement txt file. You don't have to upload it, and you only have just to provide the location where this environment is living, just as like the name. You can see here it's like my amp living in the location US West 1, and I'm gonna just update my requirement txt file. So it's pretty straightforward, and it's easier just to run your test and update your environment. It's also taking like 5 minutes just when you update your environment, but it's not like taking so long as you can just wait for MWAA in AWS, right? So let's talk about the community. This is a pretty important topic that I really like to bring your attention to, because, for example, for MWA, there's no like a big community. You only have like the GitHub community where this MWA local runner live, and you have like the issues, and you can create issues and ask questions and ask for some improvements or something like that. But the community is not that big, and this is one of the pushbacks for AWS. But it's you have to keep in mind that it's barely new. It had already like 2 years Google Composer in the market when MWA just got released. So it's good, perfectly normal that the community is not that big, but that's it. For Google Composer, you can see like there's this GitHub community where the Google Composer team is publishing their Google Composer images. And the most important, and one of the things that I like most about Google Composer, is this Google group. So I'm putting here the link about Cloud Composer Discuss. If you search for there, you're gonna see a lot of posts of myself that I'm just not also answering questions, but I am also doing some questions about what if I want just to use a Python 3.7 version instead of 3.6 because there's a specific function that I need to, and there's these guys also to me like there's no way to do it. You can raise a ticket in here, and it's pretty important here is that like the developers of Google Composer are in this group, so you have like a direct line for the developers and help that you need, and there is a huge community here, and it's pretty active, and you can just search for there your question and that kind of stuff. It's pretty amazing, this group. I highly recommend this Google group for Google Composer. And also you can just search for other group like a Apache Airflow. There's like huge community in there, that kind of stuff. So, but for specifically MWA, there's GitHub, and for Google Composer, for those specific topics, you have work with the Google group. So let's talk about our conclusion. So which cloud provider should I choose? Like, should I choose wisely? Oh, well, that depends of if your company or whether you're working there already have some credits or are working in some cloud provider, you can just stick to that. Also, if you're just working by your own, you can just have different free tiers or some credits to work on different of the cloud. That depends of that, and basically it's based on your needs. Because if you are working with some specific resources, maybe Google Cloud Composer is gonna work best for you because you can just use memory storage and compute memory instead of CPUs and that kind of stuff. But maybe I don't know. Maybe you're gonna work with some AWS technologies, and you're just gonna be connected to some S3 buckets and some Redshift stuff. So that kind of depends. So it's based on your necessities. Also, for the price against the resources, you have just to keep in mind that even if you have a small environment on the cloud, is not gonna be the same as your local machine. Maybe you have a MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of RAM and an i7 processor, and it's working fine on your local machine, but it's not gonna work the same in the cloud, even if you are using the MWA local runner, because the resources that you are just assigned to your local instance are not gonna be the same for the cloud. And once again, the dependencies. Maybe you need some specific version of some libraries, like maybe you are using a specific pandas version, and that specific version of pandas use a PyArrow version that you won't be able to install in Google Composer because are not able to, or it's are some incompatibilities in there. So you need to use AWS, right? So that's basically how things works. And because in Google Composer you are not able just to modify or install the core or Apache Airflow. That's the main difference in the AWS. You can just play with that. So those are the things that you have to keep in mind if you want just to choose one of the cloud providers. Also for the CI/CD, if you're gonna run integration tests, just unit test, just integrity test. So that's the main things that you have just to keep in mind. And for tips and tricks, I can tell you that you have to try, fail, learn, and then repeat, and that's gonna be the recipe of the success. So this is like riding a bike. You can just get all the theory, you can just read all the books that you want and see all the videos that you want, but that doesn't really work until you just have the bike in your hands and just ride it. So you have just to try it, and at the beginning maybe you're gonna fail, maybe in the future. I mean, I have like I've been working with Airflow for more than 4 years and it's still failing in some other task, but I just try to learn what I did. I just go and ask for help. And once again, try, learn, and repeat. That's how things works. The other tip that I can give you is like one step at a time. So maybe you are what with Airflow and you normally work and you just create your own DAG, the whole DAG, and then you upload it to the cloud, and maybe it's not working expected. So one of the things that you can do is just do some steps of your DAG and then try it in the cloud. And based on that, you can just continue your developing for the DAG, because it's not gonna be the same for the resources and all the concurrency that is working. Because maybe for your local environment you only are working with that DAG, but maybe the whole company is running a lot of DAGs in the cloud, and that kind of stuff is gonna give you some pushbacks or some new learning, right? And The last tip that I can give you is um, like 2 or 3 hours of debugging can save you 5 minutes of reading documentation. That's a true story. I've been there. I done that. So read documentation. That's one of the most powerful weapons, and one of the things that you can also do is try new stuff. I remember that I was just copying some file from Google Cloud Storage to S3, and then I was vice versa, and then I already saw that there's already an operator for that, but it was taking so long, and then I was just check under the hood what's going on and saw some errors in there. So it was easy to me just to fork the repo of Apache Airflow and then do some modifications, create a pull request, and fix that operator. And now my code is living in the Apache Airflow that you are seeing day by day. And I'm pretty happy because of that. And it was not that hard. And trying new stuff like saying like there may be gonna be some new optimization that I can go with. And there may be this operator, but check if that's gonna be work for my case. So try new stuff, and every time if you have some questions or things like that, ask for help. There's the community, this list, there's like this kind of stuff like Westlife Academy, and we are here to help you. There's pretty important, like my grandma always told me, like the knowledge is useless if you don't share it. So here we are, and this is like that tips and tricks, right? So there is nothing that I can tell you, but thank you for your time. I hope that you just enjoy this journey with me, being my co-pilot in this session. Um, Feel free just to add some suggestions, comment, questions. You can go directly to the Whiteline Academy, or also, if not, you can just directly send me an email. In here, there's my address, rodrigo.chaparro@whiteline.com. Even if there's not Airflow in the cloud, or it maybe just Airflow, some data engineering stuff, will be able to glad to help you. So try it. And happy coding. See you today next time.